In this video, I'm going to be explaining my side of the story to whether or not the Mets will be buyers or sellers. Now, I'm not doing this with a screen or anything because I don't think it's that important. This is more so based on my own personal feelings, so I'm fine vlogging it, even though it's probably going to get less views. But this is just like me expressing my own feelings. It's the issue of presenting my own opinion on the matter. Because I've seen a lot of debate on Twitter as to whether or not the Mets should be buyers or sellers. Personally, I think that they should be buyers. And I'm going to present my rationale in this video. First of all, you have to realize that the Mets are not like a normal baseball team. They have one great year and then fall into irrelevancy for a while. They've never had any sort of period of like sustained success. You know, you look at the 1969 Miracle Mets that won the World Series, then they regressed right back down to earth in 1970. 1973, yes, they might have almost won the World Series. They took it to Game 7. They won 82 games that year, and somehow were able to nearly win a World Series despite such a poor regular season performance, which is, I think, is actually even more remarkable how bad the NL East was, given how back then only 4 teams made the playoffs. Shame on the NL East that year. 86, the Mets win the World Series. In 1985, they were good, but they didn't make the playoffs. 1987, they regressed. In 1988, yes, they made it back to the playoffs and lost in the NLCS. The Mets have only made it to the playoffs in back-to-back years twice, 99 and 2000 and 2015-2016. They've never made it to the playoffs 3 years in a row. And between 2000 and 2015, they only made it to the playoffs once, and that was in 2006, where they lost in the NLCS to an 83-win team. So basically, if it was a normal team that we were talking about, yes, you could make the argument to be buyers at the deadline, to be sellers at the deadline and try to rebuild to be contenders for the next 5 to 10 years. But the Mets have a losing culture. They don't have a culture of winning and being contenders. They have a culture where they come out of nowhere, stun everyone, make a run in the playoffs, or not sometimes. And then once they're taken seriously, they immediately flop. So why would the Mets try to set up themselves for success and punt on a season? The punt is going to go nowhere. I'll use a football analogy. The punt will be blocked. That punt will be blocked. It's a blocked punt. You punt so that even though you're giving up on a drive in the NFL, you can win the battle of field position and then, hope that your defense can stop them. But if the punt is blocked, then that defeats the whole purpose of it. That will defeat the whole purpose of the punt if it's blocked. Now, should the Mets sell off some of their prospects? Yes, but they should also be buyers at the same time and make this playoff push. Now, there's a few reasons why I think that the Mets should do this, and a few reasons why I think that people are saying the Mets should be sellers should not really be considered. First of all, the Mets right now sit at 44 and 45 and only 2.5 games out of the third wild card spot. And one might be saying, why would the Mets want to be in the third wild card spot when they won't get anywhere from it? The last 2 years, ever since they had the third wild card spot in the National League, that team has gone on to make it to the World Series. Granted, they lost both times, but still, they got a really deep postseason run, which will set themselves up nicely in the future. Like, look at the Phillies. I feel like if you if you're the New York Mets here, you could easily try and squeeze yourself into that spot and then just hope for the best once you're in the playoffs. Because once you get to October, once you're in the final 12, anything can happen. And people are saying the Mets won't be able to win a sustained series. Best of 7, I might agree with you that the Mets might struggle to win that. But best of 5 and best of 3, the Mets would be able to win those. especially a best of 3. The Mets can easily win a wild card series, and they should be able to win a divisional series. NLCS, that I'll agree with you, that might be more difficult. But, it doesn't really matter that much what you do in the regular season as long as you can get hot at the right time. See, the 2022 Mets, the problem was that they got cold at the wrong time, and that's why their postseason success was zilch that year. But I feel like if you are the Mets, and you also look at the 44 and 45, they should be so much higher. And yes, I do get that their run differential right now is, -2. They do in fact have a negative run differential now. So their record and their run differential are in line. But you have to understand that the bullpen and the bullpen management by Carlos Mendoza has been really baffling. I mean, like, some of his decisions just make absolutely no sense. I'm not going to totally blame him for the loss on July 8th. Although I do think that if you have a pitcher like Christian Scott who can't pitch who can't even handle more than 75 pitches, he should not be in Major League Baseball. But I'm not going to totally fault him for that one. But July 3rd using Deichmann was inexcusable. And I don't understand why Stearns has not just DFA'd him yet. Designate him for assessment. Deichmann clearly will not do anything, even though he's the only lefty. You look at his horrible management on June 30th by using Matt Festa in the 11th inning against the Houston Astros, which ended in catastrophe. You have his horrible bullpen management June 29th against the Astros as well. And this has been a problem that's been going on throughout every single period of the Mets' struggles. They lose games they should win because Carlos Mendoza puts in horrible pitchers. Listen, I'm not totally saying to fire Carlos Mendoza. I mean, I think he should be fired, but maybe firing him after this first year is too harsh. I mean, he took a team that had very little expectations, and he is, so far guiding them to better than they were last year. Like, the Mets are on pace to finish about 80 and 82. That's better than last year when they had Buck Schweitzer, and yet they finished 75 and 87 1 year after he won National League Manager of the Year. So on the one hand, listen, I get that notion. I get the notion that that Mendoza, the players respect him, and he's helping to inspire them more. So I like him for that. But he hasn't managed games well for the most part while he was on the New York Mets. And that's my biggest issue with him, is that he's just not great at managing the games themselves. You hired a very sketchy guy. You could have taken the guy, the manager from the Brewers, who wound up going to the Cubs. He had lots of success on the Milwaukee Brewers, and instead he put in a guy who was the bench coach of the Yankees in their worst season since the early 90s. What was that thinking? Just what was that thinking? I don't get it. But you can also say Carlos Mendoza's first-year manager, and there's learning on the job. There's improving. The Mets don't have a great bullpen either. And so everyone's saying that Stearns needs to get bullpen help now if they want to be serious on a wild card push. I have a rebuttal for you. You really can't do it yet because sellers will have all the leverage and they will overcharge you. And there's nothing you can do about it. Trying to get bullpen help now, dumb idea. You just don't do it. You just don't. Bad idea. Genuinely bad idea to try to do it now. And look, there's still 16 more games. Some are against bad teams, some are against, good teams. like, or 17 until the trade deadline. Like, you have the Nationals, and I feel like the Mets would be able to win a series against the Nationals, but they won't sweep them. I mean, people are saying the Mets going 4-4 against the Nationals and Pirates is really bad, and while it's not great, the Nationals and Pirates are also both series playoff contenders. They're right behind us. So, the Mets didn't lose either of those series. They didn't win them, but they didn't lose them either. And they will probably be buyers as well as they try to make, a playoff push as well. You have a series against the Nationals. They should be able to take 2 out of 3. A series against the Rockies. This series they should sweep. Marlins, I think that they need to be able to take 3 out of 4. Marlins do love to play the Mets really tough though, so nothing's a guarantee. And this is at the All-Star break. And then you have the Yankees and then the Braves. Again, this is a bit of a tough 10-game stretch. The Mets, realistically, by the deadline, should be right at 500 or over. Maybe a game or 2 under, but they can't be multiple games under 500. But they should be able to do this. I mean, they just should be able to handle it. Yes, if they fail there, then become buyers. But if your season is still somewhat intact, which is what it is now, then don't just become sellers. Don't give up, because the Mets don't have enough of a culture to justify giving up on a golden opportunity to make the playoffs to set themselves up for long-term success that the Mets will ultimately never achieve. Try to make the playoffs now, and you have a chance of winning the World Series. I mean, the 2021 Braves were under 500 into August, and they still won the World Series. Granted, a few things are different. First of all, the Braves won the NL East. That's not happening. The Mets are right now 14-ish games back of the Phillies, and while I really do think the Phillies are going to choke on a division, it would be to the Atlanta Braves. It will be to the Braves, not to the Mets. There's no way the Mets are stealing the division. I know JG9 said that the Phillies aren't going to choke. 2022 Mets were in a very similar position, and they choked. So I still have confidence. I mean, I said the Yankees were going to choke on a division, and they did. So you never know. The Phillies are fraudulent. But what I will say also is that the 2021 Braves last year were a 3 seed, didn't have to play in the wild card round. They would have still been the 5 seed though, even if they had to be in a wild card round. They would still be the 5 seed. They're not sure that they would have won a World Series because of it. They probably wouldn't have, just based on how the playoffs went. But still, what I'm saying is that the 2021 Braves did it, 88 wins, and held it until August. So what to say that the Mets can't?